In a few weeks, Julian Alvarez is going to walk out at the Emirates Stadium. He's going to warm up on that pitch. He's going to look around at that crowd. And somewhere in that stadium, Mikel Arteta and Andrea BERTA are going to be watching him. Not just as a manager and a sporting director watching an opponent, but as people who have already decided they want to sign him. Think about that for a second. Arsenal are about to play the man they're trying to buy in a Champions League semi-final with everything on the line, and nobody is really talking about how strange and how high stakes that situation actually is. Because this isn't just a transfer story anymore. This is Arsenal's entire summer, wrapped up in one player who doesn't even want them first. I'm Amelia. Before we go any further, drop a comment right now. Do you think Arsenal actually sign Julian Alvarez this summer? Yes or no? I want to see where everyone stands before we get into this. Right. Let's talk about what's really happening here, because I've seen a lot of Arsenal fans get excited about this news, and I understand why. Alvarez is a World Cup winner. He's 26, he's got 18 goals and 9 assists this season. He's one of the best strikers in world football right now. But I want to slow down, because when you actually look at the details of this deal, the way it's structured, the problems involved, what Arsenal are risking to make it happen, this isn't a clean story at all. This is actually one of the most complicated transfer situations Arsenal have been in for years, and I want to break down exactly why. Let's start with the first question, the one I don't think enough people are asking. Does Mikel Arteta's system even suit Julian Alvarez? And I mean really suit him. Not just, yeah, he's a good player, he'll fit anywhere. That's lazy thinking. That's the kind of thinking that gets clubs into trouble. Alvarez has made it clear to Arsenal, to every club interested, he wants to play as a central striker, only through the middle, not wide left, not drifting right, not rotating across the front three, in a fluid system, through the middle. Now think about what Arsenal have built under Arteta. The front line at Arsenal is designed around movement, around interchange, Saka drifting inside, Martinelli cutting across, the striker dropping deep, linking play, creating space for runners. It's a system that demands positional flexibility. It demands players who are comfortable being in different areas of the pitch at different moments. Gabriel Jesus, when he was at his best, was the perfect example of that. He wasn't just a striker, he was a pressing machine, a link player, someone who made the whole team function better through his movement off the ball. Alvarez is different. At Manchester City, yes, he was versatile. He played wide, he played deep. But that was Pep Guardiola managing him in a specific context. And even then, his best performances, his most dangerous moments, came when he was central, when he had space in front of him, when he was the focal point. And now he's telling clubs, that's what I want. Don't ask me to be something else. So here's my question. Is Arsenal changing their system to fit Alvarez? Or are they telling themselves he'll adapt when he gets there? Because those are two very different things. If Arteta is genuinely willing to build around a fixed central striker, change the shape, adjust the roles of the players around him, give Alvarez the platform he needs, then maybe this works brilliantly. But if Arsenal are just telling themselves, he'll figure it out, he'll play the system, that's where it gets dangerous. Because this is a player who has literally communicated his requirements to potential suitors. He's not hiding what he wants. And if Arsenal sign him and then ask him to do something different, that's a problem. Not in week one, but over time, that tension builds. And I think this is actually the most underreported part of this whole story. The positional demand isn't a footnote, it's central to whether this signing works or not. Now, let's talk about Kai Havertz, because this part of the story, I think it deserves more than just a line in a transfer article. Arsenal paid £65 million for Kai Havertz. He arrived with enormous expectations, and his time at Arsenal has been complicated. Moments of quality, moments of confusion, a player who never quite found a consistent identity in Arteta's system. And now the plan is to sell him to Bayern Munich, to use that money combined with whatever fee Bayern agree to help fund an Alvarez bid. I want to be honest about something here. Havertz didn't fail at Arsenal because he's a bad player. He's not a bad player, he's a very good player. He failed at Arsenal because Arsenal never fully committed to understanding what he was. Think about it. He was used as a striker, then as a number 8, then as a 10. He was asked to press from the front, then asked to link midfield, then asked to be a box-to-box runner. And every time he started to find some rhythm in one role, something changed. That's not entirely on Havertz. That's a club that signed a player without a completely clear picture of where he actually fits. And now they're selling him to fund a striker who wants to play the same central position Havertz was sometimes asked to occupy. There's something almost painful about that. But here's the thing, and I want to be clear about this. I think selling Havertz is probably the right call. Not because he's worthless, but because Arsenal need clarity in their forward line. They need a genuine striker. A player whose identity is completely tied to scoring goals, leading the line, being the one the team looks to when it matters. Havertz has never fully been that player at Arsenal. Alvarez could be. But the risk, and this is where it gets serious, the risk is that this entire plan depends on the Havertz sale going through. Bayern are reportedly open to it, but open to it is not the same as a done deal. Transfer fees need to be agreed, contract lengths, wages, there are 100 moving parts. If that deal stalls, if Bayern change their mind, or if they come in with a lowball offer, Arsenal's ability to fund an Alvarez bid changes significantly. And suddenly you're in a situation where you've shown your hand to Atletico Madrid, you've opened talks with Alvarez's camp, you've signaled to the world that this is your priority signing, and you can't actually make it happen because the funding mechanism hasn't landed. That's a really uncomfortable position to be in. Now, let's talk about Barcelona, because this is the part of the story that I think Arsenal fans need to take seriously, really seriously. Barcelona remain Alvarez's preferred destination. That's not rumor, that's being reported consistently. He wants to play for Barcelona. And look, I understand that. I don't like it as an Arsenal fan, but I understand it. Barcelona is Barcelona. The history, the identity, the football philosophy. For a South American player, for a player with Alvarez's profile, playing for Barcelona means something. Arsenal can offer him a great project, a fantastic manager, a team that's been competing at the highest level, a stadium that is electric on big European nights. But Arsenal can't offer him the feeling of pulling on that shirt. And that matters. It shouldn't matter as much as it does in football, but it does. So Arsenal's entire strategy, the reason they're talking to his representatives before even approaching Atletico, is built around neutralizing that emotional advantage. They want Alvarez to agree personal terms first, to commit to the project in principle, so that when Barcelona finally get their finances in order, if they do, it's already too late. The player has already said yes to Arsenal. That's actually clever. That's sophisticated transfer strategy. But here's the problem. Alvarez hasn't committed yet. They're in talks, they're discussing terms, but he hasn't said yes. And until he says yes, Barcelona remain in this race. And PSG are now in the picture too. PSG can offer him things Arsenal can't, financially at least. If PSG decide this is their priority signing and they come with numbers that make everyone's head spin, that changes the conversation. So Arsenal are essentially in a race against two things simultaneously: the sentiment that pulls Alvarez toward Barcelona and the money that PSG could use to override everything. How do you compete with that? You make your football project the most compelling argument, and you make winning the Champions League a realistic possibility. Which brings me to the thing I can't stop thinking about, the semi-final. Arsenal versus Atletico Madrid in the Champions League in a few weeks. And Julian Alvarez is going to be playing for the other side. I keep coming back to this because I think it matters more than people realize. Think about the scenarios. If Arsenal win that semi-final, if they get through to a Champions League final, and Alvarez watches that from the outside, what does that do to his thinking? He's at a club fighting for fourth in La Liga. Arsenal are in a Champions League final. All of a sudden, the Arsenal project sounds a lot more compelling. But there's another scenario. What if Alvarez has an incredible game at the Emirates? What if he scores, or he creates something brilliant, or he just looks genuinely unplayable? Does that make the deal harder? Does Atletico look at that performance and think, actually, why are we selling this player? Does the asking price go up? Does Alvarez himself start thinking he could be content at Atletico for another year? Or, and this is the one I keep going back to, what if Arsenal win the tie, but Alvarez looks quiet? What if Arteta's defensive structure limits him? What if he has one of those nights where nothing quite comes off? Does that change the calculus inside Arsenal's recruitment team? I don't think it changes Arteta's mind. I think he's committed to this. But these are the variables, these are the factors that can shift a transfer story in unexpected directions. And honestly, I think this is one of the most extraordinary situations Arsenal have been in for a long time. The sporting story and the transfer story are completely intertwined. You cannot separate them. Let me take a step back for a second, because I want to talk about what this transfer actually means for Arsenal. Beyond the headlines, beyond the fee, beyond the tactics. Gabriel Jesus is expected to leave this summer. We know that. Havertz looks like he's on his way out. Arsenal are essentially clearing their attacking options and rebuilding around one signing, one player, one decision. And if it goes wrong, if Alvarez ends up at Barcelona, or if the deal collapses at the last minute, or if Arsenal get him but the system doesn't work, they go into next season with less attacking depth than they have right now. That's not a small risk. That's an enormous risk. And I want to be fair here. I'm not saying Arsenal shouldn't pursue this. If you can sign Julian Alvarez, you sign Julian Alvarez. He's that good. But I think it's important to be honest about what happens if it falls apart. Because the way the plan is structured, sell Havertz, sell Jesus, use that money plus more to go after one player. There isn't a clear plan B. What's the plan B? Is it a cheaper striker? Is it promoting from within? Is it going back into the market for a third choice target who doesn't quite have the quality Arsenal need? I don't see the plan B being discussed. And that worries me because the best transfer windows aren't just about landing your primary target. They're about having contingencies, having flexibility. Right now, Arsenal's summer looks very all-in on one outcome. But here's where I actually think Arsenal have an underrated advantage. And I think this is the thing that gets lost in the Barcelona conversation. Arsenal are in a Champions League semi-final right now, this season. Barcelona aren't. And for a player like Alvarez, who is built for the biggest stages, who has 9 Champions League goals this season, who is defined by performing when the stakes are highest, the idea of joining a club that is actively competing at that level has to mean something.
Barcelona can offer history, tradition, the feeling of a dream. Arsenal can offer the reality of Champions League football right now, with a manager who has been building towards something genuinely special. And honestly, and this is my bold take, the thing I believe, even if it's uncomfortable to say, I think if Arsenal win this semi-final, if they get to a Champions League final, the Alvarez deal gets done, Barcelona's financial problems become the decisive factor. The emotion of the Barcelona dream starts to feel less powerful when Arsenal are playing in the final and Barcelona are watching from home. That's how I see it.
The pitch is Arsenal's strongest weapon. Not the money, not the personal terms, the actual football that Arteta's team is playing right now. So where does this leave us? Let me try to pull this all together. Arsenal want Julian Alvarez. They need a striker. The gap in their squad, a proper elite central number 9, has been visible for 2 seasons. And Alvarez is one of the few players in world football who can genuinely fill it. The plan has logic. Sell Havertz, free up wages with the Jesus exit, use the combined resources to make the biggest bid the club has possibly ever made. But there are 4 ways this deal can fall apart. Barcelona recover their finances and make an offer Alvarez can't turn down emotionally. PSG decide this is the summer they build around a world-class striker and they come in with numbers nobody else can match. The Havertz sale stalls and Arsenal's budget shrinks significantly. Or Alvarez simply decides he wants to wait 1 more year and push for his dream move. Any one of those 4 scenarios kills the deal, and Arsenal are currently navigating all 4 simultaneously. Which brings me back to the semi-final, because I genuinely believe that what happens in those 2 legs, how Arsenal play, whether they advance, how Alvarez performs, will shape this transfer story more than anything happening behind closed doors right now. Football is strange like that. The pitch can change everything, a performance, a goal, a moment. And this summer's most important transfer story might be decided not in a boardroom, not over a negotiating table, but in 90 minutes of football at the Emirates Stadium. I'll say this clearly. I think Arsenal get this done. I think the project is compelling enough. I think Arteta's vision is real. I think the Champions League route is Arsenal's strongest card. But I also think this is the most delicate transfer situation Arsenal have handled in years, because the variables are external, because the competition is fierce, because the player himself has a preference that doesn't start with Arsenal. And if it falls apart, I want Arsenal to have a plan B ready. Because right now, I'm not sure they do. That's the honest answer. That's where I am on this. So tell me, do you think Arsenal sign Julian Alvarez this summer? And if they don't, what does that do to Arsenal's season before it's even started? Drop it in the comments. I read everything. If you're new here and you want proper Arsenal analysis, not just hot takes, not just reaction, subscribe. We go deep here. I'll see you in the next one.